Greetings, classmates of the 4-3 English class of 2020. Before we even start the debate, I wanted to remind you of something you read in the beginning of the school year. It's a quote from George Orwell in his book 1984. It goes, "Who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past." Now this quote is really interesting, so we'll come back to it later. First, let's not leave anything to your interpretation, so let me clarify the motion of this debate. Are we, today, living in a dystopian society? The definition of a dystopia is political. A dystopia is not a real place. It's a warning, usually about something bad the government is doing, or something good it is failing to do. Actual dystopias are fictional, but real-life governments can be dystopian, as in looking a lot like the fiction. Defining a dystopia starts with establishing the characteristics of good governance. A good government protects its citizens in a non-coercive way. It is the body best positioned to prepare for and guard against natural and human-made horrors. Good governments use what's called legitimate coercion, legal force to which citizens agree to keep order and provide services like roads, schools, and national security. Think of legitimate coercion as your willingness to stop at a red light, knowing it's better for you and others in the long run. Bad governments lack checks and balances and rule in the interest of the ruler rather than the people. Dystopian governments are a special kind of bad. They use illegitimate coercion like force, threats, and the disappearing of dissidents to stay in power. Therefore, the proposition stands is that we are currently living in a dystopian society. Personally, I think we do live in a dystopia. I think so, compared to our productive capability. Millions of people die of hunger every year who don't have to, and those who are literally starving to death live completely alienated lives, slaving away at jobs they hate, where they are physically and mentally degraded, reduced to husks of humanity. This is at a time where we produce enough in terms of food and commodities that everyone could live comfortably. Let's put it this way. In ancient Greece, the fact that people were compelled to slavery or that people starved to death was an unfortunate reality. Nowadays, it's beyond terrific. The few people who are able to realize themselves by developing their minds, freed from the necessity of labor, do so on the backs of the exploited. They're either explicitly guilty, managing the productive process, or implicitly guilty, reduced to horrified passivity. The march of technology progresses unabated, but put to increasingly sinister uses. Culture, which was before the realm of a sophisticated elite that devoted their life to art, has become an industry, commodified and resold. What was before the last avenue of resistance has become the front line of control, transforming the human into a consumer. We have never lived in worse times. On December 31st in 2019, a new virus from the family Coronavidae involved in a series of cases of atypical pneumonia was detected in the city of Wuhan in China. The disease associated with this virus is COVID-19. A nonchalant response from the Canadian and US government resulted in national panic, heightened by the media. We live in a society where one virus took down one of the most powerful countries in our world. Our society is so dystopian that when there is a viral and fatal pandemic, people can't even trust the government to make the best decisions, so they go and protest against the quarantine. That is just concrete proof that everything we are brought up to think about the government is an illusion. On May 25th, Minneapolis officers arrested George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, after a Delhi employee called 911, accusing him of buying cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. 17 minutes after the first squad car arrived at the scene, Mr. Floyd was unconscious and pinned beneath 3 police officers, showing no signs of life. His arrest was captured on cell phone video, showing a white police officer kneeling on Floyd's neck for several minutes while he was pinned to the ground. The video led to widespread rage across the country, spurring protests, which sometimes included looting and vandalism. The police are here to keep order for the people in control, not to provide safety for the people who are being controlled. In fact, the police is the very mechanism that elites use to continue their global system of oppression, and the world is finally waking up to this. And they are becoming angrier every time they see blood needlessly spilled without any consequence. The United States is handling the situation so poorly that a global hacking organization, Anonymous, has started revealing the many crimes of the elite of one of the most powerful countries in the world. The illusion of a utopian society was rapidly destroyed by events that are happening right now. One might say that we live in a utopian society because we have running water, more food than we know what to do with, sewage systems, waste disposal services, technology that allows us to have access to the collective of human knowledge, and access to forums where we can discuss our ideas freely. But that's bullshit. Look outside, read the news. None of it even seems real. But it is. The United States of America were a symbol of freedom and hope, but look at them now. Their sloppy response to the COVID-19 pandemic has made them the leader in infected and dead people. Also, their police force only protects the elite, while violating the rights of the people. Police brutality and murder is a widespread problem in the United States. None of the police criminals ever face justice for their actions. This travesty has gone on for far too long, and the people have had enough. This type of behavior from the police is condoned, if not encouraged, within the United States Police Department. Officers who kill people and commit other crimes need to be held accountable just like the rest of us. People have had enough of this corruption and violence from an organization that promises to keep them safe. After the events of the past couple of years, many people are now beginning to learn that the police are not here to save us, but rather they are here to oppress us and carry out the will of the criminal ruling class. And that is just dictatorship, camouflaged under lies of equality and democracy. Now I hate to end this with such a cliché response, but it is truly all perspective. However, we live in a dystopian society because we as a people do not even attempt to better ourselves, despite the fact that we live in negativity. Our world is broken and we don't even admit it, nor do we do anything to help. It's all a matter of perspective. Which side do you choose to see? The one where you recognize the problems of the world, or the ones where you close your eyes and pretend that all you see are pretty unicorns and happy faces while being controlled by the elite? The choice is yours. Don't make the wrong one. I rest my case.
Hello everyone. I hope that you are doing well during these difficult times. I hope that you and your families are healthy and safe. Well, now let's get into business. As you all know, George Orwell wrote the book 1984, a dystopian society in which the protagonist tries to defy the laws of the party in power. But what makes this society a dystopia? Do dystopias exist? And finally, the motion of this debate, are we living in one? I'm going to keep this short since I have many arguments that prove that we are not living in a dystopia. I think that we are not living in a dystopia, but we are not living in a utopia either. I agree with what you said. We are indeed living in difficult times. However, I believe that these times do not match the criteria of a dystopian society. A dystopia is an arranged, unpleasant society that you don't want to be living in. I can agree with all of those criteria, except this situation isn't arranged. Nobody expected the COVID-19, and this disease wasn't started by people or by the government. So this is definitely not an arranged dystopia. This quarantine is instead an emergency crisis, which can be put to an end when the disease isn't a threat to society anymore. But in the dystopia, there is no stopping. The government or the party in power controls everything. In this society, well, at least in Canada, the government listens and applies the people's demands. In the dystopia, people are scared of its government. But in this society, the government is scared of its people. This is a partially modified quote from V for Vendetta. The government is scared of its people, now more than ever, which is the opposite of dystopia. In the dystopia, the government tries to brainwash its people so that they don't start a revolution, which is strictly banned from doing. I agree that the things happening in the United States are horrible and that these police officers should be punished. But look around. If we were living in a dystopian society, there couldn't be any protests, any campaigns. People would be scared to express themselves. But people aren't afraid of the government. They're doing what they think is right. There are many campaigns and protests to acknowledge the fact that there is still racism in this world, and that this society is far from being perfect, but we are always trying to improve it and make it a better place. A characteristic of a dystopia is that the people living in them often experience limited personal freedom. That would mean that they would have little to no freedom or control over their own life. We can see that in George Orwell's 1984, where people can't even have a sexual intercourse or even have thoughts. The fact of thinking would mean that they have committed thought crime, which is a serious offense in this dystopia. But as you can see, at least in Canada, there is something called freedom of speech. This means that you can express yourself the way that you want, without censorship or restraint. Of course, there are some limits like hate speech and etc. But anyway, this proves again that this society does not match the characteristics of a dystopia. I'm not saying that we are living in a perfect world either. Our generation and the next generations have to work on this society to improve it. A utopia is almost impossible and only exists in fiction. But the fact that we are always trying to make it into one proves that the people have an optimistic point of view on this society. Someone might say that we are too attached to technology and that it controls our lives, and that technology is one day going to take over humankind. That person has to understand that technology is a tool, not a lifestyle. In no other time could you go online and have every aspect of human history and knowledge on your fingertips. You want to learn how to program? Just go online and take a free course. Don't like your job? Just apply to 1,000 other companies, or even quit and start your own company. At no other time in history has this level of personal choice been available. Most major countries and their populations actively oppose racism, religious wars, and support creating opportunities for citizens in need. In terms of war, after World War II, we have gone for about 70 years without the major powers warring against each other. No, we are not perfect yet, but the most important part is that we are a society striving to improve. If you want to express yourself, you can post a YouTube video and have millions of people hear what you have to say. I feel like this era is the start of a better future. Everything being accessible in the palm of your hand. This is far from being a perfect society, but we're going there. As the proposition said, it's all perspective. The society that we live in is far from perfect, but it is also far from being a dystopia. If you think about it, we all survived because we stuck together. Today's situation may seem chaotic and feel like there's no hope left, but that's just how life is. After every war, there's peace, and after every disease, there's a cure. Well, to finish this debate, let me just say, every cloud has a silver lining. And best wishes to you and your families. Thank you.